Look at this landscape. On one side, lush, life-giving green. On the other, a brutal wasteland. Ancient Egypt stood as the world's undisputed superpower, but its survival hung on a single geographical reality, the predictable annual flooding of the Nile River. Without the river, there was no food and no empire. The ruler of this empire, then, experiences a terrifying nightmare. 7 grotesque, starving cows rise from the river. These skeletal animals lunge at and consume 7 healthy, fat cows. Look at this stone carving of grain stalks. In a second dream, the imagery shifts to agriculture. 7 thin, scorched ears of grain swallow up 7 healthy, full ears. While we might dismiss these as mere nightmares, the ancient world viewed dreams of this magnitude as urgent state omens, warning of national collapse. Pharaoh is left paralyzed. The most powerful man on earth suddenly faces an unpredictable, unexplainable threat to the core of his nation's food supply. Pharaoh summons his Hartumim, the scholars and magicians of the empire, but even with their vast knowledge, they are completely incapable of deciphering the dreams. This failure leaves the state apparatus paralyzed. The advisors have no answers, creating a massive vacuum at the top of the government. Then, a breakthrough. The royal cupbearer remembers a Hebrew youth he met in a dungeon, a prisoner with a proven ability to accurately predict the future. The extraction is immediate. Joseph is hastily shaved, dressed in new clothes, and dragged directly before the most powerful man on earth. The survival of the empire now lay in the hands of a forgotten, enslaved foreigner, a man standing at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy. Standing before the throne, Joseph shows radical humility. He makes it clear that the answer doesn't come from himself, but from God. Joseph's timeline reveals a 14-year event, split into 2 7-year phases. First, 7 years of historic agricultural abundance, breaking all crop yield records. Immediately after, a 7-year famine will strike, completely erasing every gain from the good years. Joseph had mapped out a precise 14-year window of survival, forcing the empire to confront a specific meteorological and economic reality. Joseph doesn't stop at the warning. He immediately pitches a proactive federal solution to keep the nation alive. His policy is direct. An overseer must tax and stockpile 20% of all national produce during the 7 good years. This grain becomes a locked national reserve, a fortress of resources, ensuring the country survives when the famine arrives. Pharaoh is stunned by the wisdom of the plan. Recognizing a divine spirit in Joseph's foresight, he promotes him to viceroy on the spot. The transfer of power is total. Joseph receives Pharaoh's signet ring, royal garments, an Egyptian name, and a highborn wife. Joseph had turned a prophecy of inescapable doom into a managed, large-scale federal crisis strategy. Joseph immediately puts the plan into motion. He travels the length of Egypt to oversee the construction of silos and enforce the new tax law. The scale of the operation is staggering. They gather so much grain that it is eventually described as the sand of the sea, too vast to even measure. Maintaining a massive national reserve required intense logistical discipline. These ledgers and columns of hieroglyphs represent the accounting needed to prevent rot or corruption over the 7-year period. During these years of abundance, Joseph also builds his family legacy, fathering 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. A brilliant plan is only as good as its execution. Joseph provided the relentless discipline needed to prepare for the future while times were still good. Then the shift happens. The 7 years of plenty end exactly as predicted, and a catastrophic famine begins. This wasn't just local to Egypt. The drought struck all surrounding nations, creating a devastating global starvation event. While neighboring lands collapse, Egypt remains stable. Joseph opens the storehouses and begins distributing the life-saving grain he had spent years collecting. The entire known world soon travels to Egypt, begging the former prisoner for the food they need to survive. True leadership required the vision to recognize a coming crisis and the pragmatic action to prepare for it. In this instance, one man's foresight ensured that humanity survived.